Bridget, do you prefer Instagram stories or reels?
I like IG stories.
So I post more stories, but I prefer reels.
Okay.
Instagram in all its glory is the 7th most visited website, the 9th most Googled term, and has 1.2 billion users a month.
And there are just so many ways you can share on Instagram.
So who should we talk to on Instagram?
How about Haley Stewart?
If you don't know Haley, she's a Catholic convert who shares her story through her writing, her podcast, and the Word on Fire Institute. Better known as Haley Carrots, she has more than 17,000 followers on Instagram, and her followers enjoy her wit, her humor, and her discussions about Catholic faith and family life.
Now let's hear about Instagram.
I'm Haley Stewart. I have 4 kids, and I am a former blogger. I'm a podcaster, an author, and I'm now managing editor of Word on Fire Spark, which is Word on Fire Publishing's imprint for young readers. I first got started on Instagram because of blogging. I used to be very active blogging, and Instagram is, if we want to be nerdy, it's micro-blogging. And so that's kind of where I got started. And then as I was trying to kind of figure out my audience, I kept thinking back to my conversion. My husband and I converted to Catholicism when we were 25. And as we were discerning coming into the church, I didn't really know any Catholics in real life. So all of my images of Catholic family life really came from different blogs I was reading of Catholic families and seeing what that looked like to have a Catholic family, to be open to life. And so I try to keep that in mind on Instagram, that I might be the only Catholic that someone interacts with during their day. And even though I'm just online, I know that those interactions can be really significant in kind of starting someone's spiritual journey. As a former homeschooler who has a tattoo, I would get messages from other Catholic homeschooling moms who are saying, I didn't know there was room in the church for a Catholic homeschooling mom with a tattoo, but now I found you and now I feel like there's room for me. And so it seems so silly sometimes, but the way God has made us and the way that we are is meaningful. The church needs all of us, and the church needs you. When you're sharing things on social media authentically about who you are and what you're passionate about, that's significant and it's going to reach someone.
Next up, Darnell is going to talk to Haley about the highs and lows of posting on Instagram.
Haley, you've been active on social media for the last 10 years. What have been some of the highlights in your time on social?
I think seeing how God uses seemingly small things that maybe I shared in significant ways, like kind of funny example is I've got a lot of messages from families saying that they decided to have another baby because my youngest daughter was so cute. And I shared a picture of her on social media. So obviously I didn't share that to try to convince anyone to grow their family. But for some reason, the Holy Spirit used an image of her to just prompt somebody's heart that, hey, maybe it's time to grow your family. And so just things like that are kind of incredible.
So what have been some of the trials and some of the challenges of being on social media?
Yeah, I think the most unpleasant situations are when you're attacked by a big group of trolls, usually from some other subculture coming in and attacking you. And that can just be really scary. And so it's kind of that balance with realizing that if you take a stand on anything significant, you're going to get criticism and you're going to get backlash. And so how can you express yourself in a way that's really clear and as nuanced as you can be and as charitable as you can be, while still knowing that if you make any kind of stand, you're going to get that criticism, and just kind of preparing yourself for it.
Yeah, I imagine that can be really challenging, especially as I know the internet and social media operates very differently for men and women. So I know as a woman, I'm sure you get a lot of, hate and mean messages that I wouldn't necessarily get for voicing the same opinion. So how do you manage and deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because my husband also uses social media, and the way that people interact with me is very different from the way that they interact with him, just because I'm a woman. And so that can be scary. It can be really unpleasant. And, I think I've really gotten tougher skin over the years. And so those situations don't bother me as much as they used to, but those interactions aren't for everyone. And so I think if someone goes like, wow, I'm so uncomfortable with that possibility, that might not be what God is calling you to do. I mean, I think he really prepares us and equips us with what we need to deal with those sort of situations. And so you can prayerfully discern like, hey, this might be controversial, but I feel like this is something that really is important to be said. I'm being called to say, even though I'm going to get some criticism, because we're going to get criticism no matter what. And I think we've all made mistakes using social media. I know I have, where I haven't been as charitable as I should be, or I haven't acknowledged the nuance of something. Maybe what I said was true, but there were other complications that I should have gone into. And so just learning those things over the years, learning to clarify when maybe something we said wasn't clear, and apologize when we need to, and maybe learn to take a beat before we respond.
And so we don't want to scare people by saying like, these are like terrible.
Right, everyone's gonna come after you.
Yeah.
Like, not at all. That's not the usual experience. There's probably a special way that God is calling you to interact with the world. Maybe it's on social media. Or maybe he's told you, don't be on social media. That's okay too. But it is a tool that can be used for his glory, and discern how you're called to use that tool.
Having somebody talk about it as honestly as you gives people like inspiration and hope. So thank you for taking that time.
It's been great.
Haley introduces us to her youngest daughter, Hildy.
She talks to us about the beautiful and challenging moments of family life.
When I'm thinking about posting on Instagram about family life, I have a lot of things going on in my mind. On the one hand, I really want to show the joy of being open to life in a Catholic family, but I don't want to treat family life as something that needs to be marketed or advertised in a way that isn't authentic and genuine. And so I also try to share about the challenges and difficulties of family life, of parenthood, of raising children, to show that it isn't all sunshine and rainbows, but even more than that, that there is grace within the difficulties and the discomfort. So I'm trying to keep all of those things in mind. So to give an example, I've picked a couple of posts, and one of them is a post of my daughter, Hildy, who's my youngest. There's a picture of her going down a slide, how she just wants to do it again and again and again, and it never stops being joyful and incredible for her. And so that experience reminded me of this quote from G.K. Chesterton, how he talks about how children, this childlikeness, this joy in monotony is something that children share with God. The sun comes up every day and children delight in it. And God, this is the way that God has created the world. And it's something that as adults, we grow so cynical that we don't experience that same kind of joy. And so this is something that through my vocation, God was teaching me as he shows me this image with my daughter. But then I also try to show days that were not good. So the other post is a post of my adorable baby girl, but I talk about our day and how our car got broken into. There were all these discipline issues with the kids. Things ran long at the doctor's office when I took everyone for checkups, and it was just a hard day. But then within all that, there's this grace and there is this transformation that God is working on in our hearts as we embrace our vocations. So even within those difficulties and that discomfort, there is this grace, and we can embrace that as well.
Now Bridget sits down with Haley and goes in depth on why Instagram is her platform of choice.
So Haley, tell me why Instagram is the place for you and why you really are so passionate about sharing your content and your life there.
I think it's the most story-driven of all of the social media platforms, like both the stories that you're sharing and your captions, and then there's a feature where you can do these short little videos. And as a user of Instagram, I get a better feel for people's stories, like their lives. And so I think how you're using it and what your call is just important, that you need to be creating what you're being called to create and do that well and send it out and not overthink how many people are going to share this or what's the response going to be, because I think the Holy Spirit uses what you try to offer generously and authentically.
Yeah, that's a really good and interesting shift in the way that you think about the platform. And it ties into the authenticity that, your account obviously is, it's your life lived out. It's you sharing those moments and sometimes like allowing people to reflect on those things. How do you discern that like, oh, I could post this and it could do this, but that's not me?
I know if I said this, it would really like stir the pot. I would get like a lot of engagement, but that isn't what I'm called to do. But I think that obsessing over the numbers and how popular is something going to be is actually like hindering you from being the voice that you're being called to be.
I love what you shared earlier about how the one person might be the only Catholic touch point for a person in their community. But now that you've seen other Catholics engaging on Instagram as a platform, what have you seen kind of good and bad or missed opportunities or anything like that?
Well, it's fun seeing other Catholics engaging on Instagram because you see like their gifts and what they're good at. And that is all essential to our faith. And so I think it's important to see how Instagram can be used to bring people out of just social media into the actual doors of the church and actual Catholic community. I think it's easy to kind of think of like, what's the 5-step program we need to do this? But I think it's really, we just need Catholics to be living out their faith online and in person. And these connections happen so naturally that the people, you can just invite someone to Mass because you've connected with them. And sometimes they'll just show up. What could be more powerful than getting to experience the Mass as far as evangelization goes? If we're not kind of inviting people in a space where everyone is hanging out on social media, then we're missing that opportunity to really have that encounter with Christ.
How have you, over the years, just kind of like settled into yourself in a digital space, and that is sort of like animated you to just be yourself out there and bring other people into the fold who may identify with some part of you as well as who you are?
I know exactly what my critics are going to say. Like, they're there and they're ready. And so it's so easy to then just feel paralyzed and feel like, well, I don't want to say anything, or just feel like you can't really express yourself. And to kind of relax that and have the confidence that God made me how I am for a certain way, and there's someone I can reach because of how he made me. And so I think having a wide variety of Catholic voices is so helpful because you can see the variety of ways that the love of Christ can shine into the world and the variety of ways that God equips us to be human beings. And then you don't feel like your gifts don't matter or your gifts don't fit into this particular kind of person. That's such a great way to kind of imagine too, when we look to the saints and we see the variety and the diversity of the saints, then we can see, they don't fit into one of these boxes. I don't have to either. There's a purpose for God, how God designed me.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. You know, St. Maximilian Kolbe used all the media of his time to evangelize in any way that he could. Like, he was like fiercely excited, ready to go at it full force with his team of priests, right? So Instagram is a platform of our time. So how do you think Catholics are called to engage in the digital stratosphere, but even specifically Instagram?
It's like any of those other tools and can be used really well. Our faith has such beautiful tradition to it, but I think sometimes we get nostalgic about the olden times and forget that we were born for such a time as this. We were born now, and how would the saints engage social media? Now, would Saint Therese be on social media? You know, how would they be speaking to people? How would they be communicating the gospel? So instead of just seeing all the negatives, of which there are many, but instead of just seeing that, seeing the possibilities and how can we use this tool well.
Now Haley is going to share some of her favorite follows.
Then she's going to show you how to figure out what you're passionate about and how to use those things to bring God to Instagram.
Your assignment today for Instagram is taking time to reflect on how God has wired you. My favorite follows on Instagram are completely different people. I love following this one tour guide in Rome, this one woman who cleans houses, and she's really funny. It's just completely different kinds of people sharing their gifts and their passions and what they have to offer the world that makes it really intriguing. And so what are you passionate about? What do you love to do? What are you interested in? Because God has made you a certain way on purpose, and he wants you to offer those gifts to the world. So take some time to reflect on that. Then grab a pen and paper and start writing those things down and look at it visually and think about, how can God use me to communicate with the way he's wired me, with the passions he's given me, the gifts and talents he's given me, to offer those things to the world for his glory.
Haley is such a fun person to talk to and get to know.
It's really inspiring to see the way that she uses Instagram.
Now we want to know, what are you passionate about? It could be mainstream, it could be quirky, weird, or nerdy. It doesn't matter.
But what does matter is that you think deeply about it and try to understand how the Holy Spirit can use it to evangelize.
And share it.